The stench of fear permeated Kepler Station's slave market. It clung to the metal walls, seeped into the recycled air, and mingled with the sweat of 100 different species packed into the warehouse. Ula felt it most acutely with her heightened Sarathi senses. Her feline ears, pinned flat against her auburn hair, twitched involuntarily at each new sound: the auctioneer's booming voice, the electronic beep of credit transfers, the occasional sob quickly silenced. 23 years of life, and this was where it had led her. Standing in a processing line, wrists bound with neural dampeners, waiting to be sold like livestock. The betrayal still burned raw in her chest. Her own father, her own blood. The memory flashed again. Korath's cold amber eyes, so like her own, as he'd handed her over to the slavers. "It is your destiny," he'd said, as if that explained everything, as if that justified everything. Eula shivered despite the warehouse's oppressive heat. The thin, processing gown they'd given her after the decontamination shower offered little warmth and even less dignity. But dignity was a luxury now. Survival was all that mattered. "Next lot!" The auctioneer's amplified voice boomed through the hall. Rough hands shoved her forward. Ula stumbled, catching herself before she could fall. A mistake. The slaver guard's electro-baton jabbed her side, sending pain crackling through her nerves. A warning: appear weak, compliant. That's what they wanted to see. "Lot 437, the auctioneer announced as Ula was pushed onto the circular platform. "Sarathi female, prime breeding age, full genetic panel verification, rare purebred bloodline, confirmed fertility. Bidding starts at 20,000 credits. The spotlight blinded her, but she could still make out the crowd. Humans, Tavari with their scaled skin, bulky Grench traders, and others she couldn't name, all watching her with cold, calculating eyes, assessing her value, her potential uses. Ula felt her claws extend involuntarily, pressing painfully against the neural dampeners. 25, someone called. 30. 40,000. The bidding accelerated. Ula's heart raced with it. Each bid was another nail in the coffin of her freedom. Soon, she would belong to one of these faceless voices, to be used however they wished. 75,000, a deep voice called from the back. The crowd murmured. That was high, even for a Sarathi. 75,000 going once. The auctioneer's voice tightened with excitement. 100,000 credits. The new bid silenced the room. Ula squinted past the spotlight. A human male stepped forward, tall, broad-shouldered, with short-cropped dark hair and a face hardened by experience. His posture spoke of military training, but his clothes were civilian, worn shipboard utilities under a battered leather jacket, not the usual slaver client, not a breeding farm representative or pleasure house procurer. "Sold for 100,000 credits to the gentleman in the back." The auctioneer couldn't hide his glee. "Please proceed to processing for ownership transfer." The neural dampeners released with a click as a guard approached with a data pad. The human who'd bought her stepped onto the platform. Up close. Ula could see the details she'd missed. The scar bisecting his left eyebrow, the calculating gray eyes, the subtle combat-ready stance that most civilians wouldn't recognize. "Sign here to accept ownership," the guard said, holding out the data pad. The human, her new owner, took it. His eyes met Ula's for a moment. Something passed between them. Not pity. Something else. Recognition. Perhaps. He signed the pad, and the guard handed him a small crystal drive. "Your ownership contract, sir. Congratulations on your purchase." The human nodded, took the crystal, and held it up. The auctioneer was already calling the next lot, but he stopped mid-sentence when the human spoke. "This," he said loudly enough for his voice to carry through the warehouse, "is what I think of your contracts." He flicked a small lighter from his pocket and set the crystal ablaze. The plastic casing melted, then the internal components sparked and popped as the contract data was irretrievably destroyed. Stunned silence fell, broken only by the sizzling of the burning contract. "Run!" the human whispered to Ula. Then all hell broke loose. Security alarms blared. Guards shouted, converging on the platform. The crowd erupted in chaos, some fleeing, others trying to get a better view of the unprecedented spectacle. The human, her unexpected liberator, grabbed Ula's arm and pulled her toward the service door behind the auction block. She could have resisted, with the dampeners off. Her Sarathi strength returned. She could have broken his grip, maybe even his arm. But something told her to follow. They burst through the door into a maintenance corridor, alarm lights painting the walls red. The human moved with purpose, clearly familiar with the station's layout. "Who are you?" Ula demanded, matching his pace despite her bare feet on the cold metal floor. "Emerson Hayes," he replied without looking back. "Questions later. Right now, we need to reach my ship before they lock down the docks." A security barrier slammed down ahead of them. Hayes skidded to a stop, cursing under his breath. "Alternate route," he muttered, pulling her down a side passage. Footsteps echoed behind them, guards in pursuit. Hayes pulled a compact blaster from beneath his jacket. "Can you fight?" he asked. Ula's lips curled into a feral smile. "Her first in days. Better than you, probably." He handed her the blaster. "Prove it." 3 guards rounded the corner, weapons raised. Ula dropped into a crouch, her Sarathi reflexes allowing her to fire with inhuman precision. Stun blasts hit 2 guards' center mass before they could react. The 3rd got a shot off. But Hayes had already moved, tackling the guard with a trained fighter's efficiency. One quick strike to the temple, and the guard crumpled. "Not bad," Hayes said, retrieving his blaster. "But we're still 5 levels from the docking bay, and they're calling in reinforcements." "The ventilation system," Ula suggested, pointing to a maintenance hatch. "These old stations, they build them with oversized ducts for emergency access." Hayes nodded, impressed. "You know your way around stations." "I've been running for 3 years," she said simply. He didn't ask from what. Instead, he pried open the hatch and gestured for her to enter first. The duct was cramped, but navigable. They crawled in silence, guided by Hayes's wrist-mounted nav unit, descending through the station's infrastructure toward the docking bays. 20 minutes later, they emerged from a service panel into the chaotic docking area. Security forces were conducting vessel-by-vessel searches, but they were still several berths away. "There." Hayes pointed to a mid-sized transport ship. Functional rather than flashy, it bore the scars of long service but showed signs of meticulous maintenance. "The Wanderer, my ship." They moved casually but quickly along the dock, Hayes's jacket now draped over Ula's shoulders to hide her processing gown. Just another crew member and captain, nothing suspicious. Until a station security officer stepped directly into their path. "Dock is locked down," the officer said. "All departures suspended pending security clearance." Hayes nodded respectfully. "Understood, officer. We're just securing our cargo. Perishables." He tilted his head toward Ula. "My first mate and I have a schedule to keep once the lockdown lifts." "Oh." The officer's eyes narrowed, studying Ula's face, recognizing her Sarathi features, reaching for his comm unit. Hayes moved first, a lightning-fast strike to the officer's throat followed by a sweep of his legs. Ula was already running for the ship, Hayes close behind. "Security breach in Dock 17, shouted another officer, spotting them. Blaster fire erupted, bolts of energy sizzling past them. Ula reached the ship first, slapping the entry panel. The hatch opened agonizingly slowly. "Go!" Hayes shouted, returning fire to cover their retreat. Ula slipped inside. Hayes followed seconds later, a blaster burn scoring his left arm. "Cockpit, now!" he ordered, slapping the hatch close control. They sprinted through the ship's narrow corridors to the bridge. Hayes dropped into the pilot's seat, hands flying over the controls. Engines roared to life as external clamps disengaged. "They've magnetized the dock," Ula reported, scanning the emergency displays. "We're still secured." "Not for long." Hayes hit a sequence of controls. "Hold on to something." The ship shuddered violently as emergency thrusters fired at maximum output. Metal screamed as the magnetic locks fought to hold them. Then, with a final wrenching jolt, they broke free. The Wanderer shot from the dock, alarm klaxons fading behind them as Hayes pushed the engines to full power. Station defense turrets tracked them, but they were already accelerating beyond effective range. "They'll send pursuit ships," Ula said, strapping into the co-pilot's seat. Hayes nodded grimly. "I'm counting on it." He programmed a course, then engaged the hyperdrive. Stars stretched into lines, and Kepler Station vanished as they punched into hyperspace. Only then did Ula truly breathe. She examined Hayes more carefully, the way he checked systems with practiced efficiency, the tension in his shoulders, the blaster burn on his arm still untreated. "You're bleeding," she observed. He glanced at the wound dismissively. "I've had worse." "Why did you do it?" Ula asked, the question that had burned since he'd destroyed the contract. "Why spend a fortune to free a stranger?" Hayes's hands stilled on the controls. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, "I was a Marine for 15 years. Saw things that—" He trailed off, then started again. "When I left service, I swore I'd never stand by while someone's freedom was stolen again, not if I could help it. 100,000 credits is more than help." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Money's just money. Freedom is something else entirely." He rose from his seat. "Medbay's aft of the galley. We should both get patched up before we discuss what comes next." Ula followed him through the ship, larger than it had appeared from outside, with the lived-in feel of a long-term home rather than just a vessel. The medbay was small but well-equipped. "Use whatever you need," Hayes said, grabbing a medkit for his arm. "I'll give you privacy." Ula waited until he left, then stripped off the processing gown. The sonic shower in the corner removed the last traces of the slave market, if not the memory of it. She examined herself carefully in the reflective panel, cataloging bruises and abrasions from her capture and processing. That's when she noticed it, a subtle change in her scent, in the feel of her body. Her hand went to her abdomen, and her Sarathi senses confirmed what human technology would have missed at this early stage. She was pregnant. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She gripped the edge of the examination table, sudden nausea washing over her. Not from the pregnancy itself. Sarathi physiology made early gestation relatively symptom-free, but from the implications. 3 weeks ago, before her capture, the last night with Tarek, another refugee she'd met in the underground. They'd shared a brief connection, knowing they would part ways the next day, he to the outer colonies, she continuing her endless flight from her father. She hadn't expected consequences, hadn't planned for this. "Are you all right?" Hayes's voice came through the door. Ula quickly pulled on the clean clothes he'd left for her. Simple shipboard attire, slightly too large, but infinitely better than the processing gown. "Fine," she called back, her voice steadier than she felt. When she emerged, Hayes had changed as well, his wound bandaged. He'd prepared a simple meal in the galley, nutrient-rich but plain fare typical of long-haul vessels. "Eat," he said, "then we talk." They ate in silence. Ula's mind raced, calculating variables, considering implications. The child complicated everything. Her life as a fugitive was no life for an infant. But the alternative, returning to her father, to Korath's plans for her, was unthinkable. "You're safe here," Hayes said finally, pushing his empty plate aside. "Whatever you're running from, this ship has outrun worse." Eula's ears flattened slightly. "You don't know what I'm running from." "Then tell me." She studied him, weighing trust against necessity. "My father is Korath, High Patriarch of the Sarathi Central Enclave. She struggled for words. "He engineered my birth, not out of desire for a child, but as a vessel. There's a prophecy, an ancient text predicting the birth of a hybrid child with unique abilities, a child who could unite warring species through some kind of empathic resonance field." Hayes's expression remained neutral, neither believing nor disbelieving. 3 years ago, I discovered his plan to breed me, to create this prophesied child with a specifically chosen partner. Her claws extended involuntarily at the memory. I refused. I ran. He's been hunting me ever since. "And he found you," Hayes concluded. "He arranged my capture, the slave auction." Her voice caught. "It was all theater. He would have had one of his agents buy me, Return me to the breeding program. But I interrupted his plan. Ula nodded, then made her decision. There's something else you should know. I'm pregnant. Hayes's composure slipped for just a moment. Surprise, then recalculation. Not part of his plan, Ula clarified. Someone I met while on the run. He doesn't know. No one knows but you now. Hayes was silent for a long moment. Then, what do you want to do? The question startled her. In her world, her father's world, women were rarely asked what they wanted, especially regarding matters of reproduction and prophecy. I want... She hesitated, the concept of choice still unfamiliar. I want my child to be free, to never know a neural dampener or an auction block, to never be a pawn in someone else's prophecy. Hayes nodded, decision made. Then that's what we'll do. Just like that? Just like that. He rose, clearing their plates. I have a place, a settlement on a remote planet in the Caldera Nebula, small community of people who prefer to stay off the grid. Good people. You'd be safe there until the child is born. After that, your choice where you go. Ula's ears perked forward in surprise. You'd do that for a stranger? You're not a stranger anymore. He offered a rare smile. Besides, anyone Korath wants that badly is someone I'm interested in helping. The ship's alarm interrupted before she could respond. Hayes moved immediately to the console on the galley wall. Proximity alert, he reported, his expression grim. 2 ships just dropped out of hyperspace. Hegemony military grade, your father doesn't waste time. They rushed to the bridge. The pursuing vessels were sleek and predatory, clearly built for interception rather than long-haul travel. How did they find us so quickly? Ula wondered aloud. Hayes examined the sensor readings. Tracking device. Most likely. Standard procedure for high-value merchandise at those auctions. He began programming new coordinates into the nav computer. We'll make another jump. Lose them in the Veil Nebula. The comm system crackled to life. A holographic projection appeared above the console. A tall, regal Sarathi male with silver-streaked auburn hair and cold amber eyes identical to Ula's. Daughter. Korath's voice filled the bridge. You've led us on quite a chase. Ula's entire body tensed, ears flattened against her skull, tail rigid with anger and fear. Father. The human who interfered with your acquisition has complicated matters, but the outcome remains inevitable. Korath's gaze shifted to Hayes. Human, you have something that belongs to me. Return her, and I will compensate you generously, twice what you paid. Hayes's expression hardened. She's not property. Noble sentiments, Korath replied with a dismissive flick of his ears. But ultimately irrelevant. The prophecy will be fulfilled. Ula will return to her rightful place. The prophecy, Ula interrupted, that you've twisted to serve your own ambitions. Korath's eyes narrowed. You speak of things you don't understand, child. The convergence is larger than any individual's desires, even mine, even yours. 10 seconds to hyperspace, Hayes murmured to Ula. Korath continued, unaware of their imminent escape. I engineered your birth for this purpose, Ula. Every genetic sequence, every trait selected to create the perfect vessel for the next stage of evolution. Your destiny was written before you drew breath. My destiny, Ula replied, her voice steady despite the fury and pain inside her, is my own. The star stretched once more as the Wanderer leapt into hyperspace, cutting off Korath mid-response. Silence fell over the bridge, broken only by the hum of the hyperdrive. Ula realized she was trembling, not with fear, but with rage. The casual way he spoke of engineering her, as if she were nothing more than a laboratory specimen. He's right about one thing, Hayes said quietly. He won't stop coming. Ula nodded. The tracking device. Already on it. Hayes brought up the ship's diagnostic system. There, embedded in the hull near the starboard thruster assembly. He programmed the auto-repair drones. They'll remove it during this jump. He'll still find us eventually, Ula said. He has resources, connections throughout the hegemony. Then we'll just have to be smarter. Hayes set the autopilot and stood. Get some rest. Officers' quarters. Second door on the left. We've got 8 hours in hyperspace before we need to make our next move." Eula hesitated. "Hayes." "Emerson," he corrected. "If we're going to outrun a Sarathi High Patriarch together, we should be on a first-name basis." "Emerson," she acknowledged with the hint of a smile. "Thank you isn't enough, but thank you." He nodded once, uncomfortable with gratitude. "Get some sleep, Ula. Tomorrow's going to be complicated." The officers' quarters were sparse but comfortable. A bunk, small desk, private refresher unit. Ula sank onto the bunk, the day's events crashing over her in waves. Freedom, pursuit, the child growing inside her. It was too much to process at once. Her hand moved to her abdomen, a life created by choice, not engineering, not prophecy. Whatever happened next, she would protect this child from her father's machinations, from being used as she had been used. Sleep claimed her eventually, but her dreams were haunted by Korath's cold eyes and the weight of expectations she'd never asked to bear. She woke to the ship shuddering violently. The emergency lighting had activated, bathing the room in pulsing red. Ula rushed to the bridge, finding Emerson grappling with the controls as the Wanderer bucked and protested. "What's happening?" she demanded, sliding into the co-pilot's seat. "They followed us through the jump point," Emerson replied, voice tight with concentration. "Military hyperspace trackers. Your father's better connected than I thought." The view screen showed 2 pursuit ships gaining rapidly, weapon systems powered and ready. "They're trying to disable us, not destroy us," Ula observed. "They want me alive." Emerson nodded grimly. "Small comfort if they hit our engines." He banked hard, narrowly avoiding an ion pulse that would have crippled their systems. "There's a dense asteroid field ahead, if we can reach it." "They'll follow," Ula finished. "But we might gain enough time to make another jump." The asteroid field loomed ahead, a chaotic tumble of rocks ranging from car size to small moon dimensions. Emerson plunged the Wanderer into the maelstrom, his piloting skills immediately tested by the need to weave between constantly moving obstacles while maintaining speed. The pursuit ships followed, but more cautiously. Their military-grade hulls could withstand more impact than the Wanderer's civilian plating, but their pilots lacked Emerson's experience navigating treacherous terrain. "I need you on weapons," Emerson said, not taking his eyes from the field ahead. "Secondary console, targeting systems, we can't outrun them forever." Eula activated the weapon systems, modest by military standards, but surprisingly robust for a civilian vessel. "You've upgraded your ship." "Former Marine," he reminded her with a tight smile. "Old habits." A massive asteroid rotated directly into their path. Emerson didn't flinch, threading the Wanderer through a gap barely wider than the ship itself. One pursuit vessel attempted to follow, miscalculated, and clipped its wing against the rock. It spiraled away, damaged but not destroyed. "One down," Ula announced, training the targeting system on the remaining pursuer. "Got a clear shot on the second." "Take it." She fired a concentrated pulse at the vessel's sensor array. Direct hit. The pursuit ship faltered, its navigation systems temporarily blinded. "That won't hold them long," Emerson warned. "Their backup systems will engage within minutes. Long enough to reach the edge of the field and make another jump?" He checked the navigation display. "Barely, but they'll just track us again." Ula's mind raced. "Unless we give them something else to track." Emerson glanced at her, understanding dawning. "The emergency beacon?" "Exactly." She was already programming the device. "We launch it on a trajectory away from our actual course. It'll emit the same signature as our hyperdrive wake." "Buying us time, if not permanent escape." Emerson nodded approval. "Do it." Eula launched the beacon, sending it hurtling in the opposite direction from their planned exit point. The damaged pursuit ships, sensors still recovering, detected the strong energy signature and changed course to follow. "Now," Emerson said, pushing the engines to maximum as they cleared the asteroid field. The hyperdrive engaged, stars blurring once more as they escaped into the safety of hyperspace. This time, no proximity alerts followed. For the moment, at least, they had evaded Korath's hunters. Emerson set the autopilot and slumped back in his seat. the strain of intense piloting evident in the tightness of his shoulders. That buys us time, but not a solution. How far to your settlement? Ula asked. 3 more jumps. Approximately 30 hours, assuming no more interruptions. He rubbed his face wearily. But we can't lead them there. Too many innocent people. Eula understood his concern. Her father would think nothing of destroying an entire settlement to reclaim her. We need to know exactly what we're dealing with. She said, the prophecy, the child, all of it. My father mentioned the convergence, an ancient Sarathi text supposedly predicting the coming of a unifier. But there are details he never shared with me. Your ship has an impressive database, she continued. Perhaps we can find more information about this prophecy, understand why he's so obsessed with it. Emerson considered this. Knowledge is tactical advantage. He agreed. But first, let's put more distance between us and your father. The next jump passed without incident. Emerson took the opportunity to perform critical maintenance on the hyperdrive, which had been pushed beyond its recommended limits during their escape. Ula delved into the ship's database, searching for any reference to Sarathi prophecies, the convergence, or genetic engineering programs. What she found disturbed her deeply. Emerson, she called, voice tight with suppressed emotion. You need to see this. He joined her at the research console, wiping engine grease from his hands. On the screen was an obscure academic paper detailing rumored Sarathi genetic experiments dating back 3 decades. My birth year, Ula said quietly, and look at the primary researcher credited. Korath? Emerson read. Your father... He wasn't just following a prophecy. He was trying to manufacture its fulfillment. She scrolled through the dense text. According to this, he was combining Sarathi genetics with traces of an ancient species called the Kirthalas, a race believed extinct for millennia, but whose DNA was allegedly recovered from an archaeological site. What would that accomplish? The Kirthalas were rumored to possess natural empathic abilities, the capacity to project and receive emotional states across species barriers. Ula's ears flattened with distress. He engineered me as a carrier for these genes. But apparently, I'm not the end goal. My child would be... Emerson's expression darkened. A second-generation hybrid with stronger expression of the Kirthalas traits. A child who could influence the emotional states of entire populations, create artificial harmony between species. Ula's hand moved protectively to her abdomen, or control them, depending on who wielded that power. Your father's perfect weapon for Sarathi dominance. Except I ruined his careful genetic selection by conceiving with someone he hadn't chosen. Ula's ears pricked forward as a new realization dawned. That's why he's so desperate to recapture me now. Once he learns I'm already pregnant. He'll either terminate the pregnancy to start over with his chosen partner, or he'll take my child and try to control it instead. Ula felt cold dread settling in her stomach. Either way, I can't let him succeed. Emerson was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. We need a more permanent solution than just running. What are you suggesting? A place where even Korath's influence can't reach, not just hiding, disappearing completely. He accessed the ship's secure files, bringing up star charts of regions beyond hegemony control. The settlement I mentioned is here in the Caldera Nebula, officially uninhabitable due to radiation levels, but that's hegemony propaganda to discourage colonization of resource-rich planets they can't easily control. You're talking about the free worlds. Ula realized, planets outside hegemony jurisdiction. More than that, planets with established underground networks specifically designed to help people disappear. Emerson highlighted a particular system near the nebula center. This one, Lyra's Haven, former military outpost, now a sanctuary colony. My old commander, Captain Hayes, runs it. People there know how to stay off the grid. But we still have to reach it without leading Korath's forces there. Emerson's expression turned grim. That's where things get complicated. We need a diversion, something big enough to throw them off our trail permanently. What did you have in mind? Instead of answering directly, he brought up the Wanderer's technical schematics. "How much do you know about Starship reactors?" Ula studied the diagrams, understanding dawning. "You're not suggesting—" "Controlled reactor overload." Emerson confirmed. "Not enough to destroy the ship, but enough to create a radiation signature that would mask our actual escape route and make them believe we didn't survive." "That's incredibly risky." "So is running forever." His gray eyes met hers, steady and determined. "I didn't buy your freedom just to see you spend your life as a fugitive. You and your child deserve better." The sincerity in his voice caught Ula off guard. For 3 years, she'd trusted no one completely, always expecting betrayal. Yet this human who owed her nothing had risked everything to help her. And now he was offering to risk more. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why go to these lengths for someone you barely know?" Emerson looked away, uncomfortable with the question. "I told you. I've seen what happens when good people stand by and do nothing. There's more to it than that." He was silent for a long moment. Then, "During the border wars, my unit was assigned to pacify a Sarathi colony that had refused hegemony annexation. We were told they were violent separatists. They weren't." His voice grew distant with memory. "They were families, civilians, but orders were orders, and I followed them." Ula remained silent, letting him continue at his own pace. "Afterward, I couldn't live with what I'd done. Resigned my commission, bought this ship, started running supplies to colonies the hegemony would rather forget." He looked back at her. "I can't undo the past, but maybe I can balance the scales a little." "Redemption," Ula said softly. "Justice," he corrected, "for you, for your child, for those who can't fight back against people like your father or the hegemony." Before Ula could respond, the ship's alert system blared again. Emerson rushed to the console. "They found us again," he reported, voice tight. 3 ships this time, closing fast." "How? We ditched the tracker." "There must be another." He scanned the diagnostic readings. "Or they're tracking something else. Your biosignature, maybe?" Ula's mind raced. "The slave processing. They injected me with identification nanites. Standard procedure for high-value merchandise." "Can we neutralize them?" "Not without specialized equipment." She moved to the navigation console. "But we can use them. If they're tracking my nanites specifically, then your reactor plan could work. We make them think I was destroyed with the ship." Emerson nodded, already calculating. "We'll need to reach the edge of the Caldera Nebula first. The radiation there will help mask our actual escape." He programmed a new course. "Hold on. This jump will be rough." The Wanderer lurched into hyperspace just as the pursuit ships came into weapons range. This jump was shorter, a tactical hop to the nebula's perimeter rather than a long-distance escape. They emerged in a sea of glowing gases and dust, the nebula's brilliant colors creating a disorienting backdrop for the sensors. Emerson immediately powered down non-essential systems to minimize their signature. "They'll be here within minutes." He warned, "I need to begin the reactor modifications now." "Tell me what to do," Ula said. Working together, they rerouted power systems and prepared the controlled overload sequence. It was delicate work, too little power, and the deception would fail, too much, and they'd destroy themselves in the process. "There," Emerson said finally, securing the last connection. "The escape pod is prepped. Once the reactor sequence begins, we'll have exactly 3 minutes to launch before the radiation levels become dangerous." The proximity alert sounded again. The pursuit ships had arrived. "No time left." Ula said, "Start the sequence." Emerson initiated the reactor overload. Warning klaxons immediately filled the ship as systems began to fail systematically. They rushed to the escape pod, sealing themselves inside just as the first energy surges began to rock the vessel. Through the pod's viewport, Ula watched the Wanderer's reactor housing begin to glow with unnatural energy. The radiation would destroy any biological trackers in her system, making it appear she had perished with the ship. "Launching," Emerson announced, punching the release controls. The pod shot away from the Wanderer, immediately engaging its stealth systems. It wasn't truly invisible, but against the chaotic background of the nebula, it would be nearly impossible to detect without knowing exactly where to look. Behind them, the Wanderer's reactor reached critical levels. The ship didn't explode dramatically. Instead, it released a blinding pulse of energy that flooded sensors with radiation readings. To the pursuit ships, it would appear that the reactor had catastrophically failed, killing anyone aboard. "Did it work?" Ula whispered as the pod's small engines pushed them deeper into the nebula. Emerson checked the sensors. "They're running search patterns, but not following us. They think we're dead." Relief flooded through her, short-lived as she realized this was just a temporary reprieve. "What now? The pod's supplies won't last long." "We won't need them long." Emerson adjusted their course. "Lyra's Haven is just 6 hours from here at the pod's top speed. Captain Hayes has sensors monitoring this approach vector. They'll pick us up before we're halfway there." Eula leaned back in the cramped pod, exhaustion finally claiming her. Freedom, real freedom, felt tantalizingly close for the first time in years. Not just for her, but for the child she carried. Her hand moved again to her abdomen, a protective gesture becoming habit. "Do you think my child will have it? The empathic abilities my father engineered me for?" Emerson considered the question carefully. "I don't know. But I do know that abilities don't determine destiny. Whatever gifts your child is born with, they'll be free to choose how to use them." "Choice," Ula murmured, "something my father never understood the value of." As predicted, they were intercepted 4 hours later by a small, swift vessel bearing the insignia of Lyra's Haven. The pilot, a weather-beaten woman with captain's bars, greeted Emerson with a firm handshake and a raised eyebrow. "Trading in your ship for this bucket. Hayes, must have been one hell of a poker game." "Good to see you too, Captain." Emerson replied with the hint of a smile. "We had some trouble with hegemony pursuers." Captain Hayes, no relation to Emerson despite the shared surname, turned her assessing gaze to Ula. "Sarathi. Uncommon in these parts." She noted Ula's protective posture, the hand resting on her abdomen. Understanding dawned in her eyes. "Ah. That kind of trouble?" "She needs sanctuary," Emerson explained. "Her and her child." "High-value target?" "Highest Korath himself is hunting her." Captain Hayes whistled low. "You never do anything by half measures, do you?" She nodded to Ula. "Welcome aboard. Young lady, any enemy of the hegemony is a friend of mine." The journey to Lyra's Haven passed quickly. Captain Hayes explained the settlement's history, founded by veterans disillusioned with hegemony policies. It had grown into a thriving community of refugees, scientists, and others seeking life beyond oppressive rule. They descended through a rust-colored atmosphere to a settlement nestled in a valley between towering red cliffs. Solar collectors gleamed on rooftops, and agricultural domes dotted the outskirts. It wasn't luxurious, but it was alive. Children playing in communal areas, markets bustling with activity, people of multiple species coexisting peacefully. "Home sweet home," Captain Hayes announced as they landed. "Not exactly a paradise world, but it's free." "It's perfect," Ula said softly. They were assigned quarters in the settlement's medical section, a precaution given Ula's pregnancy. Dr. Voss, the settlement's chief physician, was a soft-spoken Tavari with gentle hands and kind eyes despite his reptilian appearance. "Sarathi human hybrid," he mused after examining Ula. "Fascinating, rare, but not unprecedented. The pregnancy appears healthy, though I'd like to monitor it closely." "There may be complications," Ula admitted, explaining her father's genetic engineering and the possible Kirthalis DNA. Dr. Voss's scaled brow furrowed. "That could present challenges. I'll need to research Kirthalis physiology. Our database has some archaeological records that might help." "Is the child in danger?" Emerson asked from where he stood by the door. "Not immediately," Dr. Voss assured them. "But hybrid pregnancies sometimes accelerate in later stages. We should be prepared for that possibility." The following weeks established a new rhythm to Ula's life, mornings spent in the settlement's agricultural domes, where her Sarathi dexterity proved valuable for tending delicate crops. Afternoons with Dr. Voss, monitoring her rapidly progressing pregnancy, evenings with Emerson, planning security measures and contingencies. Because despite their precautions, they knew Korath might eventually find them. The man had resources, determination, and the weight of prophecy driving him. The settlement's defenses are solid, Emerson explained one evening as they reviewed the security systems. Early warning arrays, shield generators, a militia of former military personnel. But if your father brings significant hegemony forces, he will, Ula said grimly. Once he discovers I'm alive and pregnant, he'll stop at nothing. Emerson nodded, his expression resolute. Then we prepare for the worst while hoping for the best. Their relationship evolved during those weeks. What had begun as rescuer and rescued became partnership, then friendship, then something neither of them had anticipated. Emerson's stoic exterior softened around Ula, revealing the compassionate man beneath the hardened soldier. Ula, in turn, allowed herself to trust completely for the first time since fleeing her father. The pregnancy progressed more rapidly than expected. By the 6th week on Lyra's Haven, Ula's abdomen had swelled noticeably, and the child's movements had become strong enough for even human perception. Accelerated development, Dr. Voss confirmed during an examination. The Kirthel's genetics are expressing themselves. I estimate delivery within another 4 to 6 weeks rather than the usual gestation period. Is that dangerous? Emerson asked, his concern evident. Not necessarily. The child appears healthy, just eager to arrive. Dr. Voss's reptilian features arranged themselves into what passed for a smile. I've arranged for more specialized equipment to be brought from the central medical facility. We'll be prepared. But fate had other plans. The attack came at dawn, 3 weeks later. Ula woke to blaring alarms and the distant rumble of ships entering the atmosphere. Emerson was already up, securing his weapon harness. Hegemony signatures, he reported grimly. At least 3 cruiser-class vessels. My father, Ula said, struggling to rise from the bed, her advanced pregnancy making movement difficult. How did he find us? Questions for later. Right now, we need to get you to the emergency bunker. Emerson helped her to her feet. The settlement's defenses will buy us time. They hurried through corridors already busy with organized evacuation procedures. Captain Hayes met them at an intersection, her face grim. Sarathi diplomatic vessel leading the charge. She reported, demanding we surrender the fugitive Ula, daughter of High Patriarch Korath. They've bypassed our communication protocols. Someone gave them our frequencies. A spy? Emerson asked. Or a frightened settler hoping to save their family. Captain Hayes replied, doesn't matter now. Defensive positions are manned. Evacuation proceeding to secondary locations. You two are priority. Bunker 3, lowest level. A tremendous explosion shook the settlement. Shield generators hit, Captain Hayes growled. They're not wasting time with negotiations. I won't endanger your people, Ula said firmly. If I surrender. Not an option. Both Hayes and Emerson said simultaneously. Another explosion, closer this time. And with it, a strange sensation rippled through Ula's body. A tightening, a pressure building. Ula? Emerson noticed her sudden stillness. She met his eyes, her own wide with realization. The baby, it's coming. Dr. Voss was summoned immediately, arriving with a portable medical kit. How far apart are the contractions? Minutes. Ula gasped as another wave hit her. It's happening too fast. The attack must have triggered it. Dr. Voss explained, helping her to a makeshift examination bed in the nearest secure room. Stress hormones can accelerate labor, especially in hybrids. Captain Hayes positioned guards at the door. How long? Sarathi labor is typically quick, Dr. Voss replied. But with the hybrid factors, I can't be certain. Hours. Perhaps, maybe less. We don't have hours, Emerson said, checking the tactical display on his wrist unit. They've breached the outer perimeter. Troops are deploying. As if to confirm his assessment, the distinctive sound of blaster fire echoed from the settlement's main concourse. We need to move her, Captain Hayes insisted. Too dangerous in active labor. Dr. Voss countered. The child is coming now. Another contraction gripped Ula, stronger than before. Her Sarathi heritage prevented screaming, but her claws extended fully, tearing into the mattress beneath her. "Emerson!" she gasped when the pain subsided. "The prophecy, if my father gets the child—" "He won't," Emerson promised, taking her hand despite the danger from her claws. "I'll die before I let that happen." The fighting drew closer. Captain Hayes organized the remaining guards into a defensive perimeter around the makeshift delivery room. Emerson checked his weapons, positioning himself near the door where he could protect Ula while maintaining a clear line of fire. "One more push," Dr. Voss encouraged as Ula's labor reached its climax. "The child is almost here." Ula summoned her remaining strength, bearing down as another contraction seized her. The sound of blaster fire intensified outside, the final defensive line being breached. "They're coming through!" Captain Hayes shouted from her position. The door exploded inward, smoke billowing into the room. Through the haze stepped a tall, regal figure flanked by armed guards, Korarath. His amber eyes fixed on Ula with cold determination. "Enough," he commanded. "You've led me on a wasteful chase, daughter." Emerson leveled his weapon at the Sarathi patriarch. "Stay back." Korarath's ears flicked dismissively. "Human, your interference has cost me greatly. Step aside, or my guards will remove you permanently." "Father!" Ula gasped through the pain of imminent delivery. "Please, don't—" "The child belongs to our people." Korarath replied, unmoved by her distress. "To the future of galactic harmony under Sarathi guidance, your selfishness threatens generations of peace. Peace through control isn't peace." Emerson countered, his weapon steady. "It's just another form of slavery." Korarath's guards raised their weapons. Captain Hayes and her defenders did the same. The room balanced on the edge of bloodshed. Then, a new sound cut through the tension, the cry of an infant taking its first breath. "It's a girl," Dr. Voss announced quietly, cradling the newborn. "Healthy and strong." The child was beautiful, delicate Sarathi ears already forming distinct points, a wisp of dark hair like her unknown father's, amber eyes blinking open to observe the world she'd entered in the midst of conflict. What happened next defied explanation. A wave of energy, invisible but palpable, emanated from the newborn. It washed over everyone in the room, then expanded outward. Those caught in its path felt a profound shift in perception. Not mind control, but something more fundamental. Each person suddenly, viscerally understood the emotions, fears, and hopes of those around them. Guards lowered weapons involuntarily, overcome by empathy for their opponents. Captain Hayes felt Korarath's genuine belief that his actions served a greater good. Korarath experienced Ula's terror at having her child's future predetermined, her desperate desire for freedom of choice. Emerson felt it all, the complex web of connections between every person present. Not imposed harmony, but true understanding. The child gurgled, unaware of the miracle she'd initiated. Korarath stood frozen, his weapon half lowered, his expression transformed by shock and dawning comprehension. "The prophecy," he whispered. "I misunderstood." Ula reached for her daughter, and Dr. Voss placed the infant in her arms. The empathic field stabilized, becoming less overwhelming but remaining present, a gentle background awareness of connection rather than the initial flood of emotion. "Father," Ula said quietly, "this is what the convergence truly meant, not control, not engineered compliance, understanding, choice." Korarath approached slowly, his typical imperial bearing absent. For the first time in Ula's memory, he looked uncertain. "May I see her?" Ula hesitated, then nodded. Korarath gazed down at his granddaughter, and the last of his coldness melted away. "She's perfect," he said softly, "and I was wrong." Beyond the room, reports flooded in from throughout the settlement. Fights had ceased spontaneously. Hegemony troops and settlers alike had lowered weapons, engaged in conversation instead of combat. The effect extended to the ships in orbit, where commanders suddenly questioned orders they'd followed unthinkingly before. "It's spreading," Captain Hayes reported in wonder. "Whatever your daughter is doing, it's affecting the entire region." "Not forcing peace," Emerson observed, enabling it, creating the conditions where peace becomes possible. Dr. Voss examined his instruments with fascination. She's generating a quantum field unlike anything I've recorded, not controlling minds, but creating neural bridges, temporary pathways for emotional data to transfer between individuals. The Keir-Thalys gift. Korath acknowledged, but expressed through choice, not coercion, the ancient texts. I interpreted them through the lens of control, of Sarathi's supremacy. He looked at his daughter with newfound respect. You understood what I could not. I didn't understand anything, Ula admitted, stroking her daughter's cheek. I just wanted her to be free to choose her own path, as I wished to choose mine. The empathic field continued its work, not by erasing differences or conflicts, but by making genuine communication possible. Old enemies saw each other as people first, adversaries second. The choice for peace remained exactly that. A choice, but now informed by true understanding of its cost and value. In the days that followed, an unprecedented transformation rippled outward from Lyra's haven. The settlement, once hidden from hegemony attention, became a neutral ground where representatives from warring factions met to experience the empathic field and begin real dialogue. Korath, humbled by his granddaughter's gift and his own misinterpretation of the prophecy, renounced his plans for Sarathi dominance. Instead, he offered his resources and influence to protect the child and establish a permanent sanctuary where her abilities could benefit those who sought understanding. Not a weapon, he told Ula as they stood watching the sunrise from the settlement's observation deck, the baby sleeping peacefully in Ula's arms. A gift. I was wrong to try to control her, to control you. She needs a name, Ula said, accepting his apology without explicitly acknowledging it, the Sarathi way. In the old tongue, Korath suggested, there is a word, Kiran. It means ray of light. It's beautiful, Emerson said, joining them. But I was thinking of something simpler, something that captures what she's brought to all of us. Eula looked down at her daughter, then up at Emerson, the human who had risked everything to save her, who had stood beside her against impossible odds, who now looked at her and her child with unmistakable love. Hope, she said softly. Her name is Hope. The first rays of dawn broke over the settlement's protective cliffs, bathing the buildings in golden light. New arrivals were already gathering, diplomats, refugees, scientists, all drawn by reports of the miracle child and the unprecedented peace she had catalyzed. Not peace imposed by force or genetic manipulation, not harmony engineered through control, but the possibility of understanding, offered freely to those willing to experience it. The choice to see beyond differences, to recognize shared hopes and fears. Hope stirred in her mother's arms, amber eyes blinking open to observe the new day. Around her, the settlement hummed with activity. Former enemies working together, barriers of species and ideology gradually dissolving in the presence of her gift. What happens now? Emerson asked, his hand finding Ula's. She entwined her fingers with his, her Sarathi claws carefully retracted. We build something new? Something better? She looked down at their daughter. And we let Hope choose her own path, whatever it may be. The empathic field pulsed gently around them, a reminder of connection freely given and freely accepted. Not the end of conflict, but perhaps the beginning of its resolution. Not forced harmony, but the first step towards something more meaningful. Peace born of choice, understanding born of empathy. Hope yawned, unaware of the transformation she had sparked, the future she represented. In time, she would understand the gift she carried. In time, she would make her own choices about how to use it. For now, she was simply a child, held in her mother's arms, surrounded by those who would protect her freedom to choose, the freedom that Ula had fought so hard to secure. The freedom that Emerson had risked everything to defend, the freedom that even Korath now recognized as more precious than any prophecy. A new day for them all, a new hope for the galaxy.